And for more on this, let's go now to John Sitilides, Foreign Policy Principal at Trilogy Advisors. John, good to have you back on the show. Last night, we heard the president say that he would no longer allow Pakistan to sort of sit idly by. He said in a roundabout way that he would kind of coerce them to join in this fight against the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now, in reality, is a strongman approach to Pakistan, which is a nuclear state, is this a wise move, and is it even possible?
It's a very desirable objective, Manila. I don't know about the wisdom of it, given the fact that Pakistan has its own interests in Afghanistan, regardless of what America would like to see as an outcome there. Not only is Pakistan very much concerned about making sure it's not caught in a vise between a pro-Western Afghanistan and a nuclear India. Remember, Pakistan is sandwiched between both of those countries, but Pakistan is also deepening its ties to China, commercially and militarily. And so Pakistan may be looking at an opportunity to achieve what we call strategic depth and achieve some level of independence from assistance from the United States.
Now, that's an interesting angle there, China. What role does China play in all of this?
China, I believe, has a very strong interest in making sure that you don't have radical Islamist entities in Afghanistan supporting Western Chinese, what we call Uyghurs, who are Muslims who live in Western China, largely in very impoverished, underdeveloped areas. And there have been many types of activities by some of these more radicalized elements, but the Chinese government has made sure to suppress media coverage of this type of activity.
We have certainly not heard much about it on air in Western media, as you said. But, you know, going back to the president's comments yesterday, Capitol Hill insiders were anticipating the president to announce a very detailed plan for Afghanistan, including the numbers of troops that will take part in this surge. But that wasn't the route that the president took. I don't think anyone should be surprised about that. There were no numbers, no dates, no actual plan of action that was announced. Is this a fair way for him to approach this announcement to the American people?
My sense is the White House is less concerned about what's fair as opposed to what they hope will work. And hope, I think, has to be underlined here. In many ways, it was the anti-Obama speech. Because there were no timelines, because there were no numbers assigned here. And in many ways, I think what the president is signaling is he trusts the military to do better than what they've been allowed to do in the past. The rules of engagement will be very different here, and I think you'll see a much more relentless type of military attacks against terrorist camps, terrorist networks, and where the military thinks that they can do devastating impact, I think Trump will give them that freer hand.
Now, as we heard in that soundbite that the president said, we're not going to be nation building, we're there to kill terrorists. He didn't mince any words about that. Doesn't this leave a big gaping hole in policy, though, and a little bit of a role for the State Department to play?
It's going to be a critical component here. Even Defense Secretary Mattis has said if he doesn't have diplomatic tools available, it means he has to buy more ammo. That's not the good way to do this. You need to see that the military and the diplomatic aspects of the strategy work hand in hand. And right now, State Department is in somewhat of a limbo regarding Afghanistan. We don't have ambassadors appointed under President Trump to Afghanistan or to Pakistan or an assistant secretary to cover that region. So we need to bolster our diplomatic efforts to complement what we hope will be greater military success.
And many argue, though, that Afghanistan this is really an unwinnable war. How is this surge, whatever it might play out to be, how is this going to be any different than how the past two administrations have handled it, Obama and Bush?
One of the toughest things, Manila, here is that Afghanistan is a largely ungovernable country. Remember, this is now a country of about 30 million people, 4 major ethnic groups, about 20 minor ethnic groups. They all live in mountainous valley areas, very much distinct geographically and politically from one another, with very little allegiance to a centralized state. They don't care what happens in Kabul. They care about their ethnic groups and their tribes. So how anybody is able to bring this together in a cohesive political unit is really difficult for anyone to envision today.
Is this a state that needs to be broken up, then?
I will leave that to geopolitical strategists who've been elected by different people.
Now, as we know, this war is wildly unpopular. The country is war-weary. How would you advise the president, if he were your client, to have approached this in delivering this message yesterday?
I will say he did one thing very smartly in the speech yesterday that I think stands out, and that is that I believe the American people are not necessarily war-weary. I think what the president said about being weary of not winning wars is really what is the malady affecting the American population when it comes to these battles. If we go in with clear objectives, we win and we come home, mission accomplished, I think the American people will support that. I don't know, though, that any Afghan strategy will help us accomplish that goal.
Well, I got to say, going back to the campaign trail, as you recall, he did say that we're going to win so much that we're going to be tired of winning. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see in the coming days how this plays out. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. John Sitilides, Foreign Policy Principal at Trilogy Advisors.